All right. Happy 2024 and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. I am joined this morning by Council President Nick Mosby, Councilman Antonio Glover. I know that Councilman Torrance is on his way. Deputy State's Attorney Tom Donnelly, Commissioner Worley, Director Mavronis from Muncie, Dr. Andre Bunley from Moam, Pastor Corey Barnes from We Are Us, and also an individual representing our GVS service partners, Tyrone Kent, Assistant Director of Outreach and Safety for Yoka, Craig Jernigan, MD and DC Regional Program Director for YAP. I didn't see Mr. Staten's not here yet, but Mr. Troy Staten, founder of More Than a Shop, is going to be here in a few. Dr. Lewis Carlson and Samantha Salisman with MedStar, Carly Pick, Violence Prevention Program Manager for University of Maryland Shock Trauma, Freedom Jones, and Adam Rosenberg, representing LifeBridge Health Center for Hope. And last, and certainly not least, this group of dedicated and passionate Safe Streets workers who are on the ground daily working to mediate conflicts in our community. I want to start by thanking each and every one of them, that all those individuals that I mentioned, for being here today. I made it very clear from the beginning. Come on, Uncle T. Uncle T, challenge to change. I made it very clear from the beginning of my administration that public safety was our #1 focus, and that we would be approaching public safety in the right way, that learned from the many mistakes of the past. When I took office, as you know, Baltimore was grappling with 335 homicides and 721 non-fatal shootings, stubbornly high rates of violence that had crippled our city for nearly a decade. And we all knew, and I knew deep in my heart, that we needed to do something different. And so we did something different. We did something Baltimore had never done before. We went and asked residents what they need to see in a public safety strategy, crafted and developed and planned and designed to serve residents over multiple years, and developed a truly comprehensive approach to solving the disease of gun violence. And in partnership with residents in Baltimore and across the city, we set forth an ambitious, comprehensive violence prevention plan to address violence in our communities as a public health issue, the first ever in Baltimore's history. When we announced the plan, many of you remember, I set the goal of achieving a 15% reduction in homicides with successful implementation of this strategy. And while it took us more than a year to achieve that initial goal, we're finally seeing those efforts paying off and saving lives. Mr. Staten, you can come to the front, sir. Let's not forget, I think it's very important that we have to understand that we had to rebuild many of the systems and build systems of infrastructure from the ground up to implement the strategy. The launch of our group violence reduction strategy pilot, which is why we had to reach out to YAP to build services for an age group of folks, quite frankly, that many organizations didn't serve in the past. Continuing to reimagine our policing practices under our federal consent decree, building out Baltimore's community violence intervention ecosystem, which is so strongly represented here today, strengthening collaboration with partners through the restarting of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and expanding the ways we're using data to inform our public safety strategies. Now, on the backs of years of hard work and laying the foundation for a successful, equitable public health approach to safety, homicides were down 20%, and non-fatal shootings were down 6.8% in 2023. And as you've heard me say multiple times before, that reduction was the largest single-year reduction that Baltimore City has ever seen. And this is just the beginning of the efforts of all of our efforts to show results. These reductions are a testament to the effective interagency coordination and collaboration across community-based partners, local, state, and federal government, law enforcement, the hard work of BPD officers, community violence intervention staff, partners in the justice system, and community-based organizations working on the ground to build a safer Baltimore. While this is meaningful progress, the disease of gun violence continues to plague our community, and none of us that you see here today are ready to celebrate. We are ready to push this work even further. Guns continue to flow from outside Baltimore into the hands of young people and other individuals who are using them to deal death and destruction on our streets and in our neighborhoods. Despite 67 fewer people dying last year versus the year before, thanks to our holistic, evidence-based public safety strategy, we still lost 263 Baltimoreans to violence. And that is unacceptable because, as we say, and we are us, one life is one too many. I made it very clear to Deputy Mayor Barksdale, Monsi, BPD, and every single agency that falls under my purview that we must carry our momentum forward to ensure sustained long-term reductions in violent crime. We must continue on the path of progress and build on the groundwork that we laid. Continue to remove illegal guns from our streets by going after straw purchases, gun traffickers, in addition to going after locations that continue to sell guns to people that they know are going to end up on the streets of Baltimore. Strengthen our efforts to engage in proactive, community-centered law enforcement strategies. Expand proven public safety strategies like GVRS and community violence intervention that go after those responsible for driving violence in our communities and address its root causes. Ensure that we are properly rehabilitating residents returning home from prison so that they are ready to re-enter society and don't go back to doing what got them into prison in the first place. Working with partners at every stage of the justice system to make sure that nobody falls through the gap, but most importantly, deepening our work and connection with our residents and community organizations to help aid them in building public safety in their communities. We also understand that young people in Baltimore continue to experience acute levels of violence and trauma. And in order to achieve and sustain long-term public safety, we have to address that problem head-on, which is why we continue to prioritize diversion interventions specifically tailored to supporting our young people, including intensive case management for at-risk youth in partnership with city schools, our Safe Passage program to mediate and deter conflicts while young people are traveling to and from school, school-based violence intervention, and investments into social emotional learning to show young people how to effectively resolve conflicts without feeling the need to resort to violence. Now is not the time to allow those with personal agendas to take us back to the old broken ways of the past. We've proven that strategies and collaboration represented by this incredibly expansive and diverse group of people standing with me works. We reduced violence in Baltimore in its largest drop ever, while illegal arrests were going down in Baltimore City. We can do it, and we can do it the right way. Baltimoreans' lives and the future of our city are on the line. And as this coalition showcases, no single entity can do it alone. A week from now, the Maryland General Assembly will gather again for this year's legislative session. And there are priorities both specifically related to public safety and otherwise that we'll be fighting for to go even further. We'll be talking about home monitoring because I know I speak for many of us here when I say we're tired of finding victims of gun violence and perpetrators of gun violence in our neighborhoods with the ankle monitor on. That should not happen. We should be able to get to those folks and allow them to be rehabilitated, but most importantly, to stay alive. We'll continue talking about finishing the job of local control once and for all, Mr. President, so that we can make the necessary changes here in Baltimore to make BPD better. But we'll also be advocating for things that help bolster our efforts for equitable development, investment in our young people, and policies we know will help grow the economy of the city, because all of those have an impact on gun violence and public safety too. If folks don't think that Baltimore having its lowest unemployment rate last year has anything to do with the violence drop, you should be thinking about that even deeper. We'll be talking about our ambitious, groundbreaking plan to tackle vacant properties once and for all, because we know that vacants are both a symptom of historic disinvestment and a driver of continued neglect for certain communities, and addressing that issue for good will only bolster our efforts to continue pushing public safety and curtailing violence. We'll be talking about investments in our city on education and capital projects across the city, and we'll be talking about growth strategies to continue building on Baltimore's renaissance. All of these things play a role in driving down violence and improving public safety. You have my word, Baltimore, that we will continue to do the work necessary to address the violence that has plagued our communities and save the lives of our neighbors, our loved ones, and our fellow Baltimoreans through prevention and constitutional community-centered policing. We will not stop. We want to go even further. And with that, I will turn it over to Commissioner Worley to discuss the work that BPD is doing to hit into 2024. Mr. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mayor Scott, Council President Mosby, and all of our partners here this morning. BPD is proud to stand here to discuss the historical reductions in gun violence, but also acknowledge that there's much more work to be done. Our department is committed to doing the work the right way. I think we've shown over the last couple years that we can both reduce crime and reform a police department at the same time through constitutional policing and community-oriented policing. However, we know that our partnerships, including all the partners standing here today, some of you out in the audience, have been the catalyst behind our reductions. Additionally, the hard work of the men and women of the BPD that led to increased arrests, gun seizures, and as the mayor mentioned, the rapid decrease of illegal arrests. In 2023, BPD officers took over 2,900 guns off the streets of Baltimore. We continue to work with many of our law enforcement partners in targeting those perpetuating violence in our city while focusing on limited resources to reach a greater impact on the epidemic of gun violence in our city. Another major milestone that this year was redistricting. This is something that the mayor started working on probably even before I know him, 10 years ago, a decade, when we were both in the Northeast and realized the Northeast was way too big. In July 9th, we implemented redistrict boundaries with new posts, new sectors. The first time it's been done in over 60 years. We did it all within the BPD, all with our data analysts from BCIT and everyone else in the city helping us to redevelop this without spending millions going outside. We did it within. There were some hiccups. There still are a few issues, but what it did, it balanced out the workload to allow us to better police and more equally police the city. Some parts of the city were over-policed, some were under-policed. This is going to balance it out. The good thing about it is we can review and reassess the new posts and boundaries and regularly following data-driven strategies to change those when we see something's not working. Working collaboratively on a comprehensive approach to crime reduction with all our partners has really been the change agent in moving the city and the department forward. Mayor Scott and Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement have played a pivotal role in the comprehensive crime reduction prevention plan, which includes the group violence reduction strategy, community violence intervention, behavioral health, 911 diversion, and so much more. The group violence strategy, or GVRS, has led us to focus on both prevention and enforcement to achieve greater reductions in gun violence this year. This strategy will be part of phase 2 of the department's reorganization that we announced last month, where we will include expanding the group violence unit. I want to thank State's Attorney Bates and his leadership team for their ongoing partnership and meeting with us monthly to increase our collaboration and to better work together on solutions to reduce crime in our city. Also, U.S. Attorney Barron, all our federal partners, and Governor Moore and his administration have all been at the table and working with BPD to help to make Baltimore a safer city. And most importantly, our community. We are seeing more tips come in and working alongside various community organizations to address crime in neighborhoods. And this is another indication that community policing is working, that our officers are starting to get out of the car, they are doing a better job, and we will continue to do that as we move into 2024. However, as we continue in the new year, I'm encouraged, but one homicide is one homicide too many. While the accomplishment was a good one, it's not anything to completely celebrate. We still had over 260 homicides in the city. But we are and must continue to use data-driven strategy, looking at trends and issues within the city. Continuing to move in the right direction and forming our department under federally mandated consent decree. With the recent organizational changes, our department will continue to streamline our process and improve its day-to-day operations. I'm proud to have led such a diverse and hardworking group of men and women in the PPD. 2023 was not easy, and our staffing continues to be a challenge, but together we continued to overcome many challenges throughout the year, and we will continue to do it with teamwork. I am most proud that we continue to prove that we can do more to create a safer city, and the only way we can accomplish this is by working together in teamwork. Thank you. At this time, I will turn it over to Deputy State's Attorney Tom Donnelly.
Thank you, Commissioner Worley, Mayor Scott, and City Council President Mosby. I'm Deputy State's Attorney Tom Donnelly, standing in for Ivan Bates, who unfortunately was not able to attend today. In the past year, we have been fortunate enough to have partners in Mayor Scott and the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety, also Commissioner Worley and Baltimore Police Department. We really appreciate the partnership we've been able to form with BPD. I also want to acknowledge the working relationships and partnerships we've formed with the U.S. Attorney's Office, Eric Barron, the ATF, the U.S. Marshals, the DEA, and FBI. They're all integral partners to what we do here in Baltimore in prosecuting crime. We're encouraged by the alliances we have built. We look forward to building on the now momentum that exists, and we look forward to working with our partners in public safety. And at this point, I'd like to hand it over to City Council President Nick Mosby.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We stand here today understanding and acknowledging that undoubtedly the city of Baltimore is not moving in the right direction as it relates to public safety. But we also stand here understanding and knowing the calamity and residual effects of the grief of the 262 individuals that lost their lives in the streets of Baltimore, and their families and the communities that were impacted. Let's not allow complacency to be the enemy of progress. That's why each and every one of us stand here today. And I stand here as the City Council President to say the Council's #1 priority has been and will continue to be, in working with the administration, is to reduce violence in the city of Baltimore and increase public safety for our young folks, for our communities, for our elderly members. The reality is, when we look at the statistics, they're not just numbers, they're actual faces. And the reality is, we stand here today with this historic reduction. But if each and every one of us stand committed to not just talking about from a law enforcement perspective, but really going after and providing safe havens and trajectory of increase for our young folks in our communities on a daily basis, we will stand here next year as sustainable reduction. That must be the charge, and that must be the goal. And that does not just take place in City Hall or in the headquarters of the Baltimore Police Department, but it takes place in the community. And that's why I'm excited to stand with the community partners that the mayor has invited here today, because they're the actual ones that are doing the hard work. The folks that are culturally connected to our young folks, our young boys on the corner, our young men in their homes, our young men all across Baltimore City. That if we're serious about not just standing here for this historic reduction, but serious about sustainable, consistent reduction of crime and public safety in our city, that we'll continue to do our hard work. And Mr. Mayor, Mr. Police Commissioner, and to all of our partners that stand here today, the council, I'm joined by Councilman Tony Glover, as well as Councilman Torrance. We stand committed to support that effort. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the Director of Muncie, Ms. Stephanie Morales.
Thank you very much, Council President. My name is Stephanie Mavronis, and I serve with the incredible team at the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. We know one key contributor to the record reductions that we're experiencing is Baltimore's first ever comprehensive violence prevention plan, a plan that directly speaks to so many of the work of the people, the organizations, the institutions who are joining us here today, and so many others who aren't represented in this room. Each one of you is committed to this work of reducing violence in your daily work, and it's for that reason that we are seeing the reductions we see today. I personally want to thank you and express my gratitude. Your work saves lives and is making a difference. Monty is the steward of the city's public health approach to public safety. We started nearly 3 years ago building the systems needed to deliver an evidence-based approach to public safety, one that goes beyond policing and prosecution. We now see the fruits of our shared labor, and in many ways, our work is just getting started. The mayor's been clear. Our job now is to double down on this progress and push ourselves harder, alongside our partners in this work, to deliver sustained reductions in violence for Baltimore. I'd like to talk about where we stand halfway through year 3, our securing year of the 5-year comprehensive violence prevention plan, and where we're heading next. We will scale the promising outcomes of the group violence reduction strategy beyond the Western and Southwestern districts. We're just around the corner from full implementation in the Central District, and by the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter of this year, we plan to scale GVRS to the Eastern District. Not only is GVRS saving lives, keeping people safe, alive, and free, it's directly playing a role in driving down overall violence. We engage the individuals we know are the most at risk of gun violence and offer them another way. Since launching GVRS in January 2022, 132 people in the Western and Southwestern districts have accepted that opportunity, getting paired immediately with a life coach at ROCA or YAP and getting a range of services tailored to their needs, including cognitive behavioral therapy, education, and emergency relocation where necessary. A key goal of the strategy is to reduce re-victimization and retaliation, and the low rates of both since the start of the strategy, 4.3% for re-victimization and 5% for recidivism, are evidence of our success. Again, we're talking about the individuals who we've identified as being most at risk of gun violence. And where individuals we identify do not accept the offer to turn their lives around, we are ensuring swift and certain consequences, thanks to our law enforcement partners. In 2023, there were 130 GVRS arrests. At present, there are 3 ongoing investigations in the Western District and Southwestern districts combined. We've also been working to strengthen our community violence intervention ecosystem, addressing root causes and breaking the cycles of violence through engagement, prevention, intervention, and victim services. The incredibly committed staff of Safe Streets, the flagship of Baltimore's CVI ecosystem, used their credibility to mediate well over 1,400 conflicts in 2023. Each of these conflicts had the potential to turn violent and did not because of the work of the men and women of Safe Streets. They too must be commended for their role in these historic reductions. Last year's program evaluation of Safe Streets showed this program produces reductions in homicides and non-fatal shootings in neighborhoods where it operates, generating anywhere from $7 to $19 in economic benefit for every $1 we invest. And we're committed to its continued success in partnership with our communities. Our goals for CVI this year are simple: supporting, staffing up, and strengthening Safe Streets, fully launching our school-based violence intervention pilot program with city schools, leveraging messengers that are credible to our students at the highest risk of gun violence, mediating conflicts, and shifting communal norms, and building stronger connections between the many grassroots efforts, violence intervention organizations, hospital systems, and victim service providers that make up our CVI ecosystem to better serve those at highest risk and increase the effectiveness of our interventions and ultimately prevent violence. Just a few final points I'd like to highlight before closing. In 2023, Monty's Victim Services team, which grew this year to fill gaps and support survivors of gun violence, intimate partner violence, and other trauma, assisted 163 people. Additionally, the Baltimore City Visitation Center, which our agency manages, served 702 individuals, and over 1,300 people received anti-human trafficking training. In 2023, our agency activated 17 unique coordinated neighborhood stabilization responses, tailoring direct supports rooted in healing to communities impacted by trauma. As we enter the new year, Monty is also focused on reentry, building on our ability to support Baltimoreans who are returning home from incarceration in partnership with DPSCS and the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, with the process starting well before release. And this is the year we will scale our pre-arrest youth diversion program, Sidestep, citywide. We understand that every single life lost to violence in Baltimore is one too many. We will not stop, and we will not be deterred in this most important mission. Today, we take stock of our progress. We've come a far way from where we started. Baltimore now sees what is possible when government, community-based organizations, and residents work together, and we'll continue this work to produce sustainable reductions again in 2024 and for years to come. My team and I look forward to continuing these conversations across Baltimore in the coming months and deepening our partnerships, and thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I am so thankful for the mayor's vision and emphasis on collaboration. That is the work that we've done with our young people, basically being in their space and in the places where they are. What we look to do as we do this work is to make certain that we understand what they need. But you can't understand their need if you're afraid to be in their space. So the emphasis is to be where our young people are. But the process that we've seen that has helped to contribute to the reduction in violence that we are seeing is because we are emphasizing three things: guidance, support, and accountability. Those are things that without having the right family structure, our young people don't understand. But everybody needs guidance, support, and accountability, even other people's children. And so what we want to do is make certain that we leave nobody behind. I'm thankful that the mayor has emphasized that we collaborate. That's what we've seen with the Squeegee Initiative, but that's a universal concept. So I'm just happy to be a part of the team. I'm happy to be a part of the integration of the work. When I look out and see our brothers and sisters from Safe Streets, I'm so happy, again, about this notion of collaboration. This notion of collaboration has put us in a place where we're still heartbroken because we have lost individuals. And Baltimore will be a place with all of these strong people who are committed to the work that we will not realize the pain that we're realizing now, but we're soldiering up right now to continue to move forward as we move forward. Thank you. Pastor Bond.
We're grateful and thankful for the plan and the collaboration of all of these wonderful organizations. We're looking forward. We have gratitude for 2023, but we have fortitude for 2024. And fortitude is through the pain, through the struggle, we're going to continue to go forward. We're going to continue to make change. We're going to continue to collaborate, and we're going to continue to change the lives of our people. So we're grateful and we're thankful to the mayor. We thank you for everyone who's here. But we're moving with fortitude. We are us. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Bonds, and thank you, everyone, for being here today. I think Pastor Bonds summed it up very well about how we are, where our mindsets and our hearts are moving into this year. So with now, we'll take questions.
For any questions, if I could have you step to the mic so that your colleagues can capture sound.
Hi, Mayor. Yesterday, we were in the community that saw the first homicide of the year, unfortunately, and there was another shooting about 3 blocks away just after noon. How do you translate the drops in homicides and shootings to making people actually feel safe? Because some of the people there just felt like things hadn't changed.
Well, I think that we just have to continue to work, right? I think what you hear from us is not a celebratory tone, right? And I know we're out detectives and folks will be working on that issue, but we have to continue to work each and every day. But it's also about making sure, and that's when I said about being more deeply connected to the community, helping those community members, whether it's through We Are Us, Safe Streets, any of our community partners, the police department themselves, having better relationships so that folks know what's happening, what's going on. But it's also about the accountability that you heard Dr. Bunley talk about, right? When folks know that individuals that do things like that in a community are held accountable in multiple ways, then they start to understand. But the last part of it is that is a challenge I'll issue to you. We need to talk about the city being safer as much as we talk about individual incidents of violence.
And what are your legislative priorities? What can the General Assembly do this year that you think would make your job easier?
Well, we have a long list, but we'll start with a few. Since you were asking about public safety, I'll start there and say, listen, we were there last year. For years, you heard me talk about going on homicide scenes and finding people dead with ankle bracelets on. The largest mass shooting in the history of the city, one of the folks arrested had an ankle bracelet on, right? We need the state to change that law immediately. This is 2024 now. Residents in Baltimore and quite frankly across the state of Maryland think that if someone is on home monitoring or GPS monitoring, the moment they step out of where they're supposed to be, they think that we, local government, law enforcement, et cetera, can infect something immediately. No, we can't, and that needs to change so we can keep those people alive and more other folks alive as well. In addition, we'll be down there. We already know, you talked about our vacant program. We want to talk about a huge investment into our vacant strategy. We want the state of Maryland to allow Baltimore to have what basically every major city in the country and Ocean City has, right? Allow us to keep some of our local sales tax here in Baltimore so that we can do two things: pull down the $1 billion in order to help with our vacant problem, and also give every homeowner in Baltimore $1,000 off their property taxes. So that's just two.
Thank you. And if I could have you start with your name and outlet.
Barry Sims,
Barry.
WMAR-TV. And this is for the mayor and also for the commissioner. And this is dealing with the staffing challenges dealing with the police department. Under the consent decree, one of the things that the city keeps talking about, and also going through those hearings with Judge Bedard, is getting out from under it. And the biggest problem still seems to be staffing. So what is being done now to try to improve staffing, and not only that, have those things worked? Because are you getting more officers or other people coming to want to be part of the police department?
Well, I'll start, and I'll say that we're consistently having classes and consistently recruiting. The commissioner and I just graduated a class last week, actually. Last week, we just graduated a brand new class. I know there's two classes in the academy right now. And I think it's important, Barry, for your viewers to understand that law enforcement staffing challenges are not a Baltimore City thing. They're a United States of America thing following 2020. We, and I'll be with my brother and sister mayors in D.C. in 2 weeks, and we consistently talk about this, and Baltimore is consistently one of a few cities right now that has police academy classes growing. We also announced a few weeks ago that we have another I-team being given to Baltimore from Bloomberg that's going to help us on police recruitment. So we're not only focusing in on it here locally, we're working with our partners, external partners, to bolster the efforts around police recruitment in the city as well. Mr. Commissioner?
Yeah, we continue to, we have a $10,000 signing incentive. I just signed numerous letters yesterday to offer an incentive to officers who have left over the last 3 years to come back. But even if we hired 500 cops a day, we're not going to see any residual effect of it for all of 2024. So we're going to continue to do what we did in 2023 and do it better with the people we have now. The one thing I can tell you about the just over 2,000 cops we have, if we give them a mission and we tell them why we're doing it, they'll go out and do whatever we need them to do. And they've done a fantastic job this year. I'd like to have the cops, but they're not coming anytime soon, and we'll continue to adjust and do the best job we can with what we have.
Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45. Our questions are for the mayor. Looking back at your first 2 years in office, crime was at historic highs. Knowing what you know now and what it took to get crime under control, in hindsight, do you think that your decision to not call out Marilyn Mosby's selective prosecution policies contributed to the crime problem and us not seeing these crime reductions sooner?
I think that as we said before, to blame one person or give one person the credit is a false narrative. We did the work. I think what led to Baltimore being in that position is years of disinvestment into systems, right? There was no MONSE. There was no public safety oversight office here, right? BPD didn't have a focused strategy. They didn't have a strategy where they were focused on the most at-risk individuals. What caused it is that we didn't have that, and we had to build that, right? But we also have to understand that every single city in this country following the pandemic saw a spike. And what we did was actually work out to build something that will work over time. And I remember specifically you and others from your station telling us, asking me consistently, When is this 15% reduction going to happen? When is the plan that you guys put forth going to actually work? Now it's working, and you want us to look back. We're looking forward. Let's talk about the single biggest year reduction in homicides and how we want to beat that in 2024. Let's talk about how these community partners and these people are out here risking their lives, spending times away from their family, doing this tough work each and every day, even though people are trying to tear them down for their own selfish reasons. And also, I think it's important for us to note that while we had a larger reduction this year, we even had a small reduction in reducing homicides the previous year as well.
But in terms of accountability, and could we have gotten here sooner, do you think it would have helped to call out those selective prosecution policies?
I don't think you hear me very clearly. I don't do performative stuff. That's not me. I focus on the work. I focus on what is under my control. And what's under my control are the women and men of BPD and the folks at Muncie. They were doing the arrest then. They're going to continue to do the arrest now. We're going to continue to do all of that great work. I think it's also important to highlight that courts were also closed at a long period of time. So folks were being arrested for violent crimes and not even going to court. We're talking about systemic things that many of them still need to be changed, right? When we had a different state's attorney, I was talking about GPS monitoring. Right? No one else was talking about it. But now people are starting to understand, and I want the residents of Baltimore to not fall into prey about making this about individuals. This is about folks understanding and working together. I work fabulously and love our new state's attorney. I worked with the former state's attorney. I work with the U.S. attorney, the ones before, the temporary ones. We've worked with multiple ATF folks. We're going to work with, as long as I'm here, whoever's in the job and do our job, because that's what the voters sent me here to do, not to criticize and do performative actions just for TV.
Last question, you talked about tackling juvenile crime and those conversations that will be happening next week in Annapolis. In your opinion, do you think that the head of DJS, Vincent Sorelli's policies, are helping or hurting the crime fight here in Baltimore City?
I've stated my position on this probably about 2 billion times. This is also not about one individual, and this is where I'll go a little deeper. You've heard me say for multiple years that the system of juvenile justice in this state needs to be reimagined. That is when Mr. Sorelli was in New York, right? This is about a system that needs to be changed. For 8 years, we heard not a single peep from you guys about the governor's role and state's role and DGS's role. Now, all of a sudden, miraculously, we want to talk about that. The system needs to be changed so that we balance the accountability that needs to be there with the fact that we're talking about 12, 13, 14-year-olds that need services. We can save many of them, and those who we can't, then there needs to be consequences. But we need to entirely rebuild the system. My answer on that is not going to change. Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, Emily Hofstetter, WYPR News Public Radio. A lot of the services, holistic programs that we've heard about this morning have used quite a lot of funding from ARPA money, which was obviously a one-time thing. What are the plans? How can we make this fiscally sustainable, especially given that we're concerned about budget shortfalls?
Yeah, I think the great thing, thank you for that question, Emily. The great thing about what we have here in Baltimore is that yes, we're using ARPA funding for some of it, but we're also blessed to have philanthropic partners who are helping us already on GVRS and have invested more because they've seen the success of the program. We always have great partnership with our state partners. We have the best federal delegation in the country that goes down to D.C. to bring home resources for us. We're going to do more here locally as we have to, but we're also going to continue to expand those partnerships that we already have existing, because this has never been about whether folks in Baltimore will put up money to help, of our partners will put up money to help. They wanted to see proof of concept, and I think we have proof of concept many times over.
And a follow-up question also about money. Given this, success in reducing, obviously one homicide is too many, but we are seeing some success. What does this mean for the police budget in this upcoming fiscal year? Are we expecting it to increase to do more of that work, stay the same, decrease?
I think we've been very, very clear, Emily, about the city's fiscal situation, right? We know this is going to be a tough fiscal year. We have seen Commissioner Worley and the team do with with the resources that they have, and we know that everybody's going to have to be tightening their belts around here. So looking for large increases in any agency is not something that you should be looking for with the city's fiscal situation.
Mr. Mayor, Ken Duffy with BL News Radio. Happy New Year, by the way.
Happy New Year, sir.
So you got homicides below 300 for 2023. Do you have a specific target number in mind for this year? Do you think it's possible to get it below 200 for 2024?
I think the goal is still the same, right? I said that we want to do it 15%. We want to do it 15% again. We want to continue our reductions of that number. It's the percentile number that matters to us the most.
And just a question for the interim Muncie director. The GVRS expansion, is that still the original plan to have the expansion for this year? Or, as far as the timeline, I know it's been a while since we kind of got an update on that. Is that still on track?
Come on.
Yes, so like I said, we're right around the corner from expansion to the central district. I will say we stepped through redistricting with BPD, and so it was important to us before we just charged ahead that we were stabilizing in the districts where we already had expanded. And so once we were able to ensure that we were solid in the Western District and the Southwestern District, we were able to really build that foundation for the central and are looking forward with great anticipation to getting to the east side. We were clear when the mayor first announced and rolled out the schedule for this strategy that we were going to be looking very closely at the integrity of the strategy and the model at every step of the way. And if we needed to take more time to get it right, we were going to do so, because the last thing we want to see happen is moving so fast that the strategy breaks and falls apart. We have an obligation to those that we're serving to get it right this time, and that's what we're committed to doubling down on this year.
Jeff Morgan, WMAR. Juvenile crime seems to be the main talking point now after being below 300. What do you need to see to be able to reel that in, get that lower?
Well, I think that it's a bunch of things. I think that a couple of things I want to note that we did not talk about today, right? Because sometimes the issue gets conflated in public. Even things that we know we attribute a lot to juveniles, like carjackings. Carjackings were down 20% in Baltimore City last year as well. We know that auto thefts, which is the thing that's driving the conversation around juvenile crime for most of the story, is up, not just in Baltimore, but every single jurisdiction. What we have to do for us is make sure that we're continuing to have a plan and strategy that works on the enforcement side. We're going to continue to do that, right? BPD is going to continue to make the arrest of any and everybody. As I always say, I don't care who you are. You can be a new reporter at Channel 2. If you're stealing cars in Baltimore and we catch you, we're going to arrest you, right? But we also have to make sure, as we went through earlier, that we're doing the things that are investing in these young people earlier, right? Working with MOAIM, working with our partners at Muncie, our community partners, and We Are Us, doing the things that we're getting to those young people that are most at risk, working with the school system as we identify them, and doing something similar to what we would do with GVRS with our young people, right? Figuring out what they need, because we are talking about young people that in most cases, if we get to them early enough, we can change the trajectory of their life. But for those who don't, we're going to hold them accountable. However, we know that we need to see some changes there, because it should not be that we arrest someone in a stolen car at 9 a.m. and 6 hours later we see them in another stolen car. We have to fix those changes in the system, which is why I talked about completely understanding and deepening in the changes that need to happen to the justice system.
Last question. How do you measure success from a crime standpoint in 2024?
It's building on the numbers that we had, right? We want to see reductions. We want to see crime go down. We don't want auto thefts to be the outlier. We definitely don't want young people being shot to be the only group that saw shootings go up, right? We want to have every single crime category that we have, starting with homicides and shootings, of course, continue to go down in Baltimore.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.